other two centers of gravity are here with us today, are Eclipse and Dayjet. We cannot forget that Eclipse backlog represents 75% of the whole backlog. So the leveraging of this industry and sector on that particular manufacturer is huge. Any event on Eclipse, even a small one, represents a huge leverage reaction for many, many people, for many segments of the commerce chain, but also for the investors. And last but not least is Dayjet, who represents more than 1,000 aircraft orders and options, but it's also half of the backlog of Eclipse. So these are major centers of gravity. These are major pillars where the whole bandwagon has tagged along, the whole investment industry has celebrated and said, me too, I want to be here, I have to be here. If people are building these things, we have to be there. But just keep it in mind as a consequence of the forecast that we are looking at. Other risks are well known, like fuel costs. That's industry-wide, airlines down to VLJs. Investors' confidence, obviously everybody is watching these developments. Regulatory and infrastructure. Bruce was saying there is abundance of capacity. However, the speed of Dayjet, the speed of business, the speed of all of us, and the speed of government to make that abundance available are sometimes very different gears, and they don't meet. So we cannot underestimate when the airports are going to be available, when the air traffic control is going to open up, and so forth. And last but not least, high utilization and residual values, another investor critical point that they look at. When you purchase an aircraft today that is going to be utilized 3 times more than traditionally, everybody says, how much is it going to be worth at the end? And I'm facing that question pretty much daily with some of my clients. Let's look at some of the production and delivery challenges that they derive from this analysis. And on the production side, obviously, new technologies are riskier. One thing I'd like to point out is vendors' performance. When we look at Eclipse, Adam, Embraer, we look at the manufacturer as if they were responsible for the delivery of the product. But all of you are familiar with Airbus, Boeing, but especially Airbus with the A380 lapsus. Airbus really was not responsible for that as an integrator, but it's the supply chain of vendors who are as regulated as the manufacturers, who are as scrutinized, and who are as leveraged financially as the manufacturers who we have to look at. If you order an aircraft today, you are literally getting married to the company that manufactures that aircraft, plus 100 other companies that are vendors and supply chain partners of that company. You have risk-sharing partners. There used to be tier 1, meaning that one company supplied the subcomponent, but now those risk-sharing partners are subcontracting to other risk-sharing partners. And so sometimes for certain components, you have 2 or 3 companies delivering the piece that makes your airplane. So on the recommendations, we'll talk about that. Know your suppliers, know your manufacturer in and out before making large commitments. Delivery, entry into service speed, customer support, performance guarantees, full systems functionality, avionics, ISIN performance, so forth. We're all familiar with some hiccups. The industry is flexible. Somebody was here yesterday saying, look, we put the airplanes in hangars till we get the de-icing. We'll make it work, but keep it in mind. Regulatory and compliance, again, speed of government. I've seen projects on paper look phenomenal, but when the speed of government is compared to the speed of the business plan, there have been some differences that the equity investors can tolerate, but the debt investors who are not flexible at all and don't like surprises are very, very easy to scare. So, air tax investors, pressure points, returns. Is this industry going to provide adequate returns? Burn rates, sustainability. If the returns are good, can they be sustained? And last, the investment base. Growth or recession is going to be based on these early results and these 3 major centers of gravity to keep in mind. There are opportunities, and I'm back to the initial slide where you saw that 40% of the users are non-commercial. That's an opportunity. That's a leverage point for all of us that can swap slots with private users that might need the airplane before our business model grows fast enough. Selling and leaseback of slots to secondary markets such as training, special mission. And finally, all the business models that we know, fractional, jet cards, that we can swap and allow, if there is a shift of gears for any of the reasons we mentioned in our business models to keep our investors happy, we have a big base of users that we can swap back and forth to make sure we don't end up with 20 airplanes parked, burning cash at the rate that will scare off the investors. Manufacturer deliveries, actual versus planned. This is something that seems not so obvious, but a manufacturer's woes could be your advantage. Some operators find that the manufacturer's delays or concessions based on those delays fits their actual business plans in some occasions. I'm not advocating either, but keep that in mind. I've seen that work very well for both ends. And we're down to 5 minutes of conclusions and recommendations, and this is 5 years of insights that I hope you find effective when you go back to your drawing boards. Production rates and delivery times. In my opinion, we are overly optimistic across the board, but not too optimistic, just a bit. We have enough buffers and flexibility areas to absorb the hiccups of the sector, of the industry as planned. The only big unknown is the 1,000+ production rate that Eclipse is planning. Other than that, it's a growth projection, but is feasible. New technology certification of entry into service has been hit or miss. The Mustang has come in flawlessly. Eclipse has been back and forth to the hangar, but so far so good. The investment community, so far so good as well. There's not been a scare yet where people pull the plug or say, hold on, this is not what we thought. So we're in good shape still. One conclusion as well is that some of the new business models coming up are quite flexible, and in their business plans they are planning for buffers, they're planning for alternative shifts back and forth to proven models versus new models, and I think overall as a sector we've succeeded in doing that and keeping our investors happy. Another comment is let's learn from what's happened in the last 15 years, the fractional industry, the jet car industry, even the airline industry. Even though they are far away from our evolutionary models, there are some good lessons to learn, and sometimes we can even draw on their business models to make use of our aircraft without burning cash if our business models have hiccups or teething problems. My recommendations is know your manufacturers well, and that means not only the assembly line, but also the leverage and risk points of the manufacturers up the stream from the aluminum and titanium producers down to the risk-sharing tier 1, 2, and so forth contractors from government subsidies. Any hiccup in that chain will affect your deliveries, your capacity to generate revenues, and eventually your capacity to repay debt or reward your investors. Capital markets, investor management expectations, fundamental in this industry, no different from any other industry. And one interesting factor here, we've been talking about evolutionary technologies, engines, avionics, composite materials, business models, but keep in mind that the investor community is also looking for evolutionary capacities of reducing risk and adding return to the investments, and other industry sectors are offering that to them. So we as an industry have to say, look, this is my business plan, and this is how I'm going to make you money with your money better than the biotech or better than any other industry sectors. And I'll tell you an anecdote that the Boeing executive told me 3 years ago when the 787 program started. They were pitching together with one of their vendors for investment, so the vendor could make a piece of the airplane, of composite material. So they were big conference room, tens of millions of dollars potential investment. And the investor said, look, we'll be frank with you. You're asking us to make pieces of wing of an airplane, you're giving us this business plan, but we are balanced